The Mortal Kombat story is quite rich and interesting, honestly, as it spans more than 3 decades, and just outside of the games, we have comics and other media that really dig into more about character lore and other events that take place outside of the games. Like with many other franchises, people like to theorize stuff about all of the elements and events that take place within the games, whether it's story-based, character lore. People like to theorize about their favorite franchises, and Mortal Kombat is no different. So in today's video, we're going to be focusing on some of our favorite fan theories within the Mortal Kombat universe, but I couldn't do this video alone. I needed a lore master, the one who examines history behind the warriors of Mortal Kombat. So, joining me today is fellow Mortal Kombat content creator and commentator, History Behind the Warrior.
Hello there, and thank you for the very warm opening, Nick. It's I, History Behind the Warrior, big lore aficionado of Mortal Kombat, and basically who you kind of go to learn about the more obscure characters of the series. With that said, I super appreciate you bringing me on and allowing me to discuss all things Mortal Kombat lore and story oriented, especially with today's topics, as we do get to do a deep dive lore retrospective and breakdown of some of the crazy theories in the Mortal Kombat franchise. So with that said, once again thank you to Nick for having me on, and let's begin, shall we?
Thank you for joining me today, it's an absolute pleasure. And with that, let's talk about some of our favorite Mortal Kombat fan theories.
Fight!
Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Nick and History Behind the Warrior here, and welcome to, or welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be doing something pretty different and something a little interesting, and we're going to be diving into the weird world of Mortal Kombat fan theories.
Now, fan theories were, and still are, the lifeblood of the series, having dated all the way back to that of the early 90s, during the arcade era of games, as a single smidge and tiny idea could really lead to something very out there. It was kind of part of the arcade culture and lifestyle, where a simple tiny rumor could take an entire life of its own, even if it was built on a lie. As such, fan theories and speculation would lead to the creation of Ermac, and of course, much later down the line, Scarlet. So the influence of fan theories, as small as they might be, would have a huge, monumentous impact on the franchise moving forward, introducing new, interesting characters and premises to the franchise, but characters that would wind up staying as eternal fan favorites.
And that's what this video focuses on today, is just how impactful some of these theories are and how much it makes us change our perception of some big events or some characters within the Mortal Kombat universe. Last but not least, this video is just for fun, so let's just have a fun time as we talk about some of our favorite fan theories within the Mortal Kombat universe. We are kicking this first theory off by looking at my favorite character in all of Mortal Kombat and one of my favorite video game characters of all time, Sub-Zero. Back in the hype days of Mortal Kombat X, a group of my friends and I were discussing just who this new Sub-Zero was, because at the end of MK 2011 or MK9, Cyber Sub-Zero is the new Sub-Zero, and he's dead, he's a revenant. So when we saw human Sub-Zero in the announcement trailer, we were wondering, is there a new Sub-Zero in this timeline? In this little phase, 3 names were thrown around. One of them was being Hydro, another Lin Kuei member, and instead of using some water powers, he learned some ice powers to avenge the death of Kuai Liang. The second name that was being thrown around for a while was actually a resurrected Shao Kahn, and the reason for that being, he used ice hammers, and Shao Kahn uses a hammer, and when he used his taunt in between rounds, you could see ice that looked like shoulder pauldrons, and sometimes it looked like his helmet. Yeah, that one didn't really hammer it down for us. But the one who held the most water, or held the most ice in this scenario, was actually Bi-Han coming back as Sub-Zero. Now, hear me out, but this may sound weird, but after I explain it, it would have made so much sense until the launch of MKX. Jumping back into the events of Mortal Kombat 9 in the chapter where you play as Nightwolf, my dad's favorite character. Also, hi dad, there's the fight where you see Nightwolf and Noob Saibot, and at the end of it, Nightwolf Spartan kicks Noob Saibot into the Soulnado, and from there, all the souls crush into Noob Saibot. We don't really get to see like a definitive death or anything that happens to him in that regard. And the Soulnado was created by Quan Chi, who also restored Bi-Han, turning him into Noob Saibot. So in that point, in that Soulnado created by Quan Chi, what if he somehow got his soul back from there, restoring him as Bi-Han Sub-Zero? Like, even looking at the design of Sub-Zero in that MKX announcement trailer and the art style as a whole, it's a lot darker and grittier, such as Bi-Han in that timeline. He is a much darker version of Sub-Zero with a different moral compass than Kuai Liang. He fights a lot more violently in that announcement trailer, so many people were suspecting that Bi-Han came back wanting revenge on Scorpion. Along with that, the current Sub-Zero, the one that we're used to, Kuai Liang, was actually converted into Cyber Sub-Zero, and also died by the hands of a roided out Sindel, who's also my mom's favorite Mortal Kombat character. Also, hi mom. And at the end of the Mortal Kombat 9 story, during Raiden's chapter, we actually get to see a Revenant Cyber Sub-Zero in possession of Quan Chi. And after all of that speculation and thinking, we thought that Bi-Han was gonna be the Sub-Zero in Mortal Kombat X, but alas, with the launch of the Mortal Kombat X comics, we did find out that Quan Chi actually returned Kuai Liang back into his human form, and he would become a human Revenant Sub-Zero. But even though that this one is deconfirmed, it is one of my favorite ones to look back on, looking at how character identities could have changed within the timeline. And there's my first theory. What fun ones do you have, Callum?
Now, it wouldn't be me if I didn't try to cram and squeeze in Havok at some point in this video. Which now brings me to the question of, is Havok Dairu? Yes, we already kind of know that. But, hear me out. Was this always the original design intent and purpose for the introduction of Dairu? Because there are some very light suggestions and some very light ideas that date all the way back to the Midway era of games that do suggest that this was an idea that they were going to act on.
Turn to Saido, Dairu.
Where did you learn my real name?
Because going all the way back to Deception, when we are introduced to these two characters, they are entirely different separate individuals. I mean, hell, they have their own character slots in order to be distinguished from each other. But how would you feel if I actually told you there was some real weight behind these ideas? Because when we take a look and analysis at both of Dairu's character bios, there are in fact two instances here that do mention the word chaos. Something that really could be seen as heretical with his ties and origins to that of Saido. With his first bio mentioning his family's demise, describing it as a moment of chaos. But from his second bio, it does mention how he pulls away from this. So it kinda closes and shuts down that idea, right? Well, not entirely. The Chaos Realm itself doesn't really abide by the laws of time and space, being relative in both the past, present, and future. So time doesn't quite affect the Chaos Realm in the same way it affects the mortal plane. It is eternal and forever, and a place that shouldn't exist but still transcends time itself. Thus, the Havok we actually see here may not actually be Havok himself, but a Dairu from the future that has gone insane and been cast out into these wastelands. A very interesting but very out there idea for this character. Alas, with Armageddon having taken quite a narrative turn, we'll never quite know the true intent and design purposes behind Havok, but it's still a really fun idea to juggle around with, considering how conceptually rich and weird the world of the Chaos Realm is.
You know, I never really looked at it that way, so thank you for sharing that awesome theory. Now, moving on to theory number 3. This next theory talks about the identities and roles people have in the Mortal Kombat 1 timeline, this one in particular focusing on Hanzo Hasashi, also known as the original Scorpion of the NRS and Midway timelines. In the previous timeline, Hanzo Hasashi was Scorpion, and Kuai Liang and Bi-Han took the roles of Sub-Zero, but in the new era, Bi-Han is Sub-Zero and Kuai Liang is Scorpion, and Bi-Han would later become Noob Saibot, and as he's imprisoned in the Temple of Elements, and we do find out that Smoke is training Hanzo Hasashi, what role is Hanzo Hasashi gonna take? Is he gonna be a new character? Or is it going to take the mantle of a character we're familiar with? And that's where I'm going to say that Hanzo Hasashi is actually going to become the second Sub-Zero. With Smoke's ending showing that he's training the new Hanzo Hasashi, and we find out that Bi-Han is in captivity and he's now taken the role of Noob Saibot, we do find out from this new timeline that Liu Kang has created that every character has to have a role. And it wouldn't make sense for Hanzo Hasashi to just be some random nobody in this timeline. If anything, if they happen to continue the Chaos Reigns timeline or continue the New Era timeline, to have the function of Sub-Zero still exist in some way, I do think they are going to bring back Hanzo Hasashi and make him the new Sub-Zero, being trained under Kuai Liang and Smoke. Now I know this is less of a theory and it's more speculation and just predicting what's going to happen in the timeline, but just the fact that they establish specific roles and you can't really rule out the existence of a character, I just think that this is a fun, interesting way of thinking of what the future of this new era could be if they go down this path.
Now here was quite a hot topic of debate upon Mortal Kombat 1's announcement, and that was the belief that Liu Kang was some kind of evil, dark, treacherous, tyrannical god, one whose entire vision and world was built upon shattered dreams. And this is a particularly interesting theory because there is some very small but some truth behind it. It all does come down to like a matter of perspective here, but in Liu Kang's new era and vision, some characters are most certainly done justice, whereas others they get the real butt end of the stick, suffering from a pretty grisly fate that strips him of a future and a destiny. For Shao, he was born physically crippled and disabled, having to undergo very experimental treatment in order to be restored to an inkling of his former self. And for Shang, he's completely stripped of all magical divinity, never at any point having become a Mortal Kombat champion, and at best scrapes by as a literal snake oil salesman. So with no martial prowess and stripped of any magical capabilities, he's left as a lone drifter, forced to fight for scraps. And that's not even us touching on Quan Chi here, who was born and raised within the mines of Outworld, destined to live and die there after lifelong servitude. It's pretty grim in that regard, but is it undeserved? No, not at all. Because let's not forget, right? Shang kinda smoked him in one timeline, completely murdering him and leaving his soul to go on and murder hundreds of his Shaolin brothers. And then we have Quan, who, let's not forget, not only just really played a hand in having his girlfriend killed by resurrecting Sindel, but also enslaved him under his will during the events of MKX, turning the champion of Mortal Kombat into effectively a glorified bouncer. And then we have Shao Kahn, a character who killed his best friend, and then even went on to break his legs during the events of Aftermath. It's a pretty justified fuck you, all things considered. So to answer the theory and question of whether or not Liu Kang was a bad guy, it most certainly does come down to perspective here. But it's undeniable that he's done far more good than he has done bad here, even if there are Tarkatan lepers. God, that poor man.
Our last theory we'll be looking at today is one that people consider the golden era of Mortal Kombat, the PS2 era from Mortal Kombat Armageddon. This theory digging into the conquest mode of Armageddon and what led to the end of the world and who is responsible for it. And this theory digs in that it's actually Rain. No, not my partner Rain, I'm talking about the ninja Rain. Mortal Kombat Armageddon follows Taven and Dagon, the sons of Argus, and the two who are responsible for determining the fate of the combatants by fighting and battling to the top of the Pyramid of Argus. If Taven were to get to the top, it would cause everyone to lose their powers, but if Dagon made it to the top, it would cause every single combatant to die. This story primarily focuses on the struggle between the two bros, sadly not chilling in a hot tub 5 feet apart. And a reveal that we get in Armageddon's story is we find out that Rain is actually the bastard son of Argus and the half-brother of Taven and Dagon. With him seeking power and having neither one of the brothers have any of the power from the Pyramid of Argus, what if he is responsible for the other outcome that we get that led to Armageddon and to the reboot of Mortal Kombat 9? At some point in the story, Rain and Taven do encounter each other, and he stalls him enough where it actually leads to another outcome being possible. And this other outcome is Shao Kahn taking the power and just leading everything to Armageddon, causing the world to be destroyed, and his overall victory. So, as a result of Rain's drive wanting power and having neither one of his brothers get the power of Argus, he's actually the one that's responsible for Armageddon happening in the first place and leading to the events of Mortal Kombat 9, where Raiden has to send a message to his past self to prevent any of this from ever happening. Honestly, I found this theory to be extremely interesting, and a huge shout out to Fourth Snake for posting this video. I will link a card to it so you can check it out. He does a much better job at explaining this theory than I could, but this one was just so unique and interesting, and it talks about that golden era that so many people love about Mortal Kombat that I just had to talk about it. And those were some of our favorite fan theories about Mortal Kombat that make you think of the canon a little differently. And also, I'd love to give a huge shout out once again to History Behind the Warrior for joining me today and doing a fun video about Mortal Kombat fan theories. So where can people find you?
Well, first and foremost, I do want to say once again, a massive thank you to Nick for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I love being able to come on here and talk about all the weird and wacky things that are Mortal Kombat related, even if they are some of the more cursed rumors throughout the series. So just before we do wrap things up here, I do want to say, please don't forget to like and subscribe to show some love to Nick and his channel, and also don't forget to leave some of your own favorite fan theories in the comments below, because you never know, there may wind up being a part 2 or a future video beyond this point. Now with that said, if you do want to find my channel and some other tidbits of information regarding MK and its lore, especially with Floyd floating around the ether at the moment, please do come on by and check out my channel at History Behind the Warrior on YouTube, or you can keep up to date with me as a commentator on the pro scene at HB the Warrior on Twitter, where you get to see what I do outside of just the YouTube channel bits and pieces. With that said, once again, massive thank you to Nick. I'm going to pass it back over to him so he can close things out, but as always, stay strong, stay well, and hopefully we'll catch you in the next one.
Again, thank you so much for joining me on such a fun video, and I'd love to do a part 2 with you. I have been a big fan of yours since I was just getting through college, and all of those just nights of studying, listening to all of your videos, absolute pleasure working with you, and thank you so much for joining me on this awesome video. And just a reminder of what he had just said, if you did like this video, please drop a like on it and subscribe, it truly means a ton. And while you're at it, go subscribe to his channel and go check out his History of Scorpion video, Across the Multiverse. It's a really good video, and you should really check out his content because he does some kick-ass work. Next on the channel, we're going to be going back into all costumes ranked with Mortal Kombat characters. This time we're looking at the first female fighter of the franchise, Sonya Blade. So come back for that and stay tuned on the community tab and my social media for any updates regarding that. With that, thank you so much for tuning into this video. My name is Nick, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Fight!